Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Okay, thanks for remembering, Seth.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, we are at 1 o'clock then, so I think we better get ourselves going. So hi, my name is Kathy Higley. I'm the Vilas County Lake Conservation Specialist. I think I know a lot of you, but not everyone. We also have presenting with me Steph Boismanu. And say hi, Steph.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Good, good, good,
Yep.
good.
Yep. So Steph works with Oneida County Land and Water Conservation. And when we have Derek Thorne as well. Do you want to say hi, Derek?
Hi, everyone.
Yep.
Hello.
Derek's the AIS coordinator with an outfit called Flow AIS, which covers Forest Land, Glade, Oconto, and Marinette counties. But don't worry if you aren't from those counties. It's okay if you're from outside. This training will still count for you. And you are attending a Clean Boats, Clean Waters training. So after you take this training, you will be all prepped to inspect boats, hopefully. But if there's any other questions or confusion, feel free to reach out to us. And then if this is really your first time inspecting boats, just highly recommend you work with someone who's done it before. All right, so let's get some background here. Next slide, Steph. Okay, so we're going to cover the Wisconsin Aquatic Invasive Species Partnership and the campaigns. We're going to talk about aquatic invasive species identification, talk about aquatic invasive species regulation and some local ordinances, how to do a Clean Boats, Clean Water craft inspection, how to collect the data that you'll be collecting. We're going to watch a couple to a few, depending on how we're doing on time, Clean Boats, Clean Waters inspection videos that simulate some inspections for you. And then there's just some new information that was added last year about making sure that you're safe at the boat landings, and then how to report violations if you encounter them. All right, go ahead. Next slide. All right, so here's our EIS partnership and statewide campaigns. Next slide. All right, so the Wisconsin Lakes Partnership is a cooperative or a cooperation between the Wisconsin DNR, which represents government, the Extension Lakes, essentially, which represents the academics, and the Wisconsin Lakes, which represents the citizens of Wisconsin. So we've got government, academics, and citizens all working together to help protect lakes in Wisconsin. Now, if you've noticed, that's neither Steph or Derek or I work for the DNR or Extension. We're actually under contract with the DNR for our work. So that's how we fit into this. All right, next slide. All right, so there's a 2025 drain campaign. This is from Saturday, June 7th through Sunday, June 8th. What they're trying to promote is for Clean Boats, Clean Waters inspectors to give out more information to those that are anglers, and to make sure they know that they should be icing their catch, or at very least draining their lake water from their live wells. The law actually reads that you need to not move lake water, with a few exceptions that we can get into later. So they encourage people to ice their catch. In the past, we've given out towels or ice packs that say these kind of things. We won't have that available in 2025 with perhaps a few exceptions, but if your lake organization has extras to hand out, go ahead and use those for that weekend. All right, next slide. We have the Great Lakes Landing Blitz from June 30th to July 13th. This targets the 4th of July rush that we all see on our lakes. In the past, we were able to give out these really nice towels that boaters can use to keep their boat and equipment clean. They have nice little hooks on them that you can hook it to your boat so it doesn't blow out of your boat as you're going around. The state can't do that anymore. There might be some efforts going through some of the partners here to try to get a little bit more of those together. But this year they're offering stickers, I believe. Are they still offering
Yes.
stickers for
Yes,
Derek? Okay.
and in fact, this one is the newest one that I pulled yesterday from our resources with our partners.
Yep, thank you. So that you can ask for materials to hand out. But if you do have some of those really nice towels left over from previous years, feel free to use those as well during that time. The goal here is really just to get as many clean boats, clean waters inspectors out of the landings as we can to make sure that all those boaters that only go out on the 4th of July or just make a quick trip up north to enjoy the lakes up here have the help they need to know what the right things are to do when it comes to AIS prevention. Okay, next slide. We also have Aquatic Invasive Species Snapshot Day. It should say 2025. I believe that's still August 9th, correct? In
That is
2025?
correct, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
okay. We just
I apologize. I forgot to change that
Yeah, no problem.
here.
So that's August 9th. We really try to make sure that lake organizations are able to know what's on their lake when it comes to aquatic invasive species. There's many different ways you can do this. One of which is AIS Snapshot Day, which kind of offers a like a one and done sort of look at your lake. You get together on August 9th, you work with a coordinator, and you can go out and see what's on your lake, and you have someone at a spot waiting for you to identify anything that you come back with that might be suspicious. So it kind of gets that I don't want to call it instant gratification, but you get results much sooner than you would otherwise. So that is AIS Snapshot Day. If you're interested, just reach out to either Steph or Derek or I or your respective AIS coordinator for your county. All right, next slide. Talk about some ID. This can get a little tricky because a lot of these species look similar to our native plants or animals. So this is a map from 2023. We did have a few more occurrences since then, but this is a map basically showing where the aquatic invasive species that we consider what's high priority in Vilas County. So I would consider Eurasian water milfoil, curly leaf pondweed, and spiny water fleas, things that we really just want to try to prevent the spread of. Eurasian water milfoil and curly leaf pondweed, there are options to manage those species. It gets very, very expensive when people decide to do so, especially if populations, are there for a while. And then spiny water fleas, there really are no management strategies that are going to be permitted. So, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. So this is the general location of these priority species. You can see though that most of our lakes, we have over 1,300 lakes in Vilas County. Most don't have these high priority invasive species. So that is good news. All right, next slide. So what are invasive species? Just the basics. They're non-native plants or animals capable of causing some kind of harm, be that environmental harm, economic harm, or harm to human health. A lot of times they're successful because they just don't have natural predators or parasites. Um, Sometimes they are just out competing native species and they can be aggressive. They can reproduce early and prolifically. And I should also point out that not all non-native species are invasive. We have a lot of species that came from elsewhere that actually do kind of integrate all right into our environment. All right, next. Okay, we talked about them out competing and displacing native species and reproducing more rapidly. They're also fairly adaptable. They're difficult to control and they're costly to control, and oftentimes eradicating it is just not feasible. So if you're gonna So monitoring your lake is important for that because if you detect something early, your chances of eradicating something that you may not want are much higher. Okay, next slide. So these invasive species got here by several different means. One might be through ballast water, shipping things across the Great Lakes or across the oceans. There's intentional introductions that happened. Um, Canals, some migrated in from the ocean. The nursery industry, sometimes they introduce invasive species. Anglers in the bait industry also as well contributed to this, as did aquaculture. So all these are unintentional, of course, but um, with the exception of the intentional stalking, of course, we didn't really know some of the impacts of some of these in the past. But now we're here, so um, we do our best to continue. All right, next slide. So they spread by boaters. They can be spread by anglers. They can be spread by waterfowl hunters. Um, there's other water uses, things like seaplanes, scuba divers, and so forth. Water garden owners, sometimes they end up releasing their water garden plants into a water body, which is not something people should be doing. Aquarium owners, sometimes they do the same thing. Pet stores, there's also natural dispersal. And sometimes lake service providers, can they do lake hopping? It's just part of the nature of their work, and they can spread them as well. Next slide. So we care about this because we can see economic impacts. So waterfront property values, depending on what invasive species you're looking at, can be impacted. There's sport and commercial fishing that could potentially be impacted. Tourism, water users, and property owners and lake groups are also affected.
Mhm.
Um, I ran some numbers last year and found that AIS management and prevention efforts in just Vilas County from 2000 to 2024, and it came through all the DNR grant awards plus the match amounts that they're expected to contribute, we're at $2.8 million. So um, it can be quite costly. So we want to protect our ecology as well. We want to make sure our native fish, invertebrates, and plants have a chance. We also want to um, make sure that our boating and angling is something that we can still do in our lakes. Sometimes these invasive species can certainly impact that, especially ones that tend to surface mat. All right, next. So with all that gloom and doom talking about invasive species, it's important to also understand that not all invasive species behave the same um, in different kinds of systems. For example, I'm going to use the idea of Brandy Lake. That is the picture on it's my far right anyway. It's Eurasian water milfoil in the lake. Um, so that is the Eurasian water milfoil in Brandy Lake. But if we went over to Boot Lake in Vilas County, the Eurasian water milfoil might not even be doing as well as the northern water milfoil. So it can be highly variable. And those other two pictures show purple loosestrife, which is another wetland invasive species. The one near the boardwalk, they're just little tufts, and that's all they seem to get to. The one in the middle is doing quite well. So, all right, next. So let's talk about some of these different aquatic invasive species. One of the ones you might be familiar with is Eurasian water milfoil. Now, it spreads by fragmenting. So those boaters that drive through Eurasian water milfoil can easily spread fragments of that plant to new sites. And it only really, in theory, takes one node to reroot itself. So if you look at the plant and you see where the leaves attach to the stem, each of those sections is called a node, And in theory, it only takes one node to produce roots. So you can make a lot of little plants from that section just in that picture. So to identify Eurasian water milfoil, typically you're going to be looking for 12 or more leaflets per side. They're feather shaped and they're kind of limp out of the water. Now, this plant, if you look at the bottom picture, can surface mat and it makes boating fairly difficult in areas where it's dominant. Can imagine trying to drive through that. You just might not be able to. All right, next slide.
It's fun to stand on your shore and try to count the leaflets to see if is it bad milfoil or is it good milfoil?
Yeah, so that is a good point. It does take a little bit of time, but I think once you kind of know how it tends to look in your lake,
Right.
it's not as hard, especially when you look through the water column. At least I find that it's that they have a distinct look to them and I guess growing pattern perhaps. Um, typically after you've seen many, many, many of them together.
And
So,
last summer was a banner summer because we had ice out so early and there was a lot more sun and
mhm.
it just exploded our milfoil.
Yeah, last summer was a really good growing season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
So let's move on to curly leaf pondweed. This one is a pondweed that spreads with a structure called a turion. There's a picture of a turion in the middle of this slide. It's not a flower. It's actually a vegetative reproductive structure. It can essentially overwinter, but really it's kind of over summering with this. It's an early spring plant. It grows um, after ice out, and then it will start dying back once summer gets really warm. And then it will drop those turions into the sediment, and new plants will sprout from those turions that it grows. All right, so boaters can spread those turions to new sites. And then what we're left with in, uh, you know, middle to end of August is a bunch of decaying curly leaf pondweed. So people tend to find that undesirable. All right, next slide. Rusty crayfish can destroy aquatic vegetation and make our fish habitat less than what it was. These were likely introduced as bait by anglers. They are native to the Ohio River Basin, but not to here. And we have many native species of crayfish up in our area, but the rusty crayfish generally will have a rusty patch um, right in front of its tail there on either side. There's a few other identifying characteristics, but if you think you have rusty crayfish, honestly, that one with all the subtle characteristics of crayfish, I just usually send information to my crayfish expert whenever I've got a crayfish question because there are some subtleties. Not every rusty crayfish will have that rusty patch in front of its tail.
If it's really obnoxious, it's probably a rusty crayfish.
Yes, probably. Now
Aggressive. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, there have been some reports of rusty crayfish lakes. I'm thinking in particular of Plum Lake, where people have been reporting anecdotally they're finding there's just less and less rusty crayfish. And there's been some studies out there trying to identify what's going on. And between fungus and trematodes, they're thinking that there's some sort of parasite or diseases helping to control some of their populations. But it's kind of a to be determined thing. All right, next. Zebra mussels. So the adults can spread between lakes because they attach to firm surfaces and plants. Or in this poor instance here, a little set of, I think dragonfly, right? Or damselfly? I think it's a dragonfly.
Dragonfly.
It's covered in zebra mussels. It's hard to
Yeah.
tell. Um, so they can cause a lot of environmental and economic harm. So, they attach to anything like piers, the posts or footings. They can attach to boats and motors. The one nice thing about Vilas County is that many of our lakes are not considered suitable for zebra mussels, primarily due to their calcium concentrations. That's not the case in many other counties. I think out by Derek's side of things, there's a lot of suitable lakes. So we want to make sure that we don't spread zebra mussels. I didn't mention that there is a, a planktonic stage when these things are essentially born. They are plankton. You cannot see them, and they're just transported in lake water. So transporting lake water when people don't empty their live wells or other things containing lake water, they can't be transferring zebra mussel veligers. All right, next slide.
Kathy,
Yep.
why did you say the Vilas County waters are not necessarily good for zebra mussels? Because
So
of
not
their,
all of them. There's a good handful that are suitable, but most of the lakes here don't have high enough calcium
ah,
concentrations
calcium.
for them to find suitable habitat.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yep.
Same with Oneida County as well.
Okay. All right. So rainbow smelt, they can gobble up some of our native fish populations. They're an effective predator. These were likely spread as bait from the Great Lakes. So we have, gosh, I want to say right around between 10 and 15-ish lakes in Vilas County with rainbow smelt in them.
Oof.
All right, next.
And there are none in Oneida County.
Ah, you're lucky. All right. So spiny water fleas. This is another plankton. So these are hard to see, but from the plankton world, they're some of the biggest plankton out there. You can see them with your naked eye, but you have to try. If you're just inspecting your boat, it'd be very easy to overlook these guys. So they actually disrupt the food chain from the bottom up. They eat other plankton. So um, what happens is that they eat often a type of plankton called Daphnia. Daphnia is an algae grazer. And if the spiny water fleas are very good at what they do, which is eating Daphnia, then our water clarity gets to be less and less. So, for example, in Lake Mendota, they lost 3 feet of water clarity and they attributed that to spiny water fleas. Now, I will say too that Lake Mendota was artificially manipulated to have lots of Daphnia. So I think the impacts in that system are probably more so than what we'd see up here. So once they get to be numerous, you can find spiny water fleas globbing up like cotton with little spikes on a fishing line. Now those spikes don't hurt people. Um, they can't bite you. They're not like fleas in a sense where you'll get itchy. So there's really not a whole lot of worry for harm to people, but it does affect the ecology. All right, next slide. Okay, so this is kind of a nice picture of how small they are and how translucent they are. They're very hard to see. So this summer, we're going to be operating a hot water pressure washer to decontaminate boats around those lakes that have spiny water fleet in Vilas County, where it's safe to do so. Because we can't do it at all the lakes that have spiny water fleas up here. It's just the landings are situated so that it might not be safe. All right, so viral hemorrhagic septicemia, and there's some other waterborne threats as well. These are invisible. They're viruses, or in some cases, there could be bacteria that fish can carry. They can be in the lake water, living in your bilge, living in your live well, living in the bait bucket. So we need to drain that lake water so we're not transporting these and potentially harming the fish in our lakes. All right, next. Starry stonewort is another one that's been popping up in recent years. We don't have any populations in Vilas County, and I don't believe we have any in the areas that Steph or Derek are representing, but there are populations around the Door County down through the Milwaukee area. They're actually a macroalgae, and they're pretty competitive. They can grow down to 27 feet. They don't need a lot of light, and they produce these star-shaped, they're called bulbils, just under the sediment. It's not a root. It's sort of a food storage mechanism, kind of like a potato is for a potato plant. It's holding starch for that algae. And they're star shaped. So that one's if you can look down and see, pulling it out of the sediment, that's a dead giveaway that it would be starry stonewort. All right, next. Faucet snails. They're a carrier for a parasite. Now, the parasite's actually native, but it harms waterfowl, and it just tends to be a great host for that parasite. So they attributed about 50,000 duck deaths in the upper Mississippi Wildlife Refuge due to faucet snails. Now, I'm not aware of any populations up here, but we'd like to keep them out. All right, next slide.
There
That's a
is
Go
new
ahead.
one
one.
population of faucet snails in Langley County.
Okay, thank you. Think that's right. Yeah, that is your area, isn't it? Thank you, Derek. All right, so now there's a lot of other invasive species listed out there and aquatic invasive species. And there's a lot of native species that are lookalikes to these. Now, the nice thing though is that you don't have to be an expert on ID. Excuse me, because they all have the same prevention methods. So next slide. We're going to inspect boats, trailers, and equipment. Going to remove all the attached aquatic plants and animals. Going to drain all the water from boats, vehicles, and equipment. Going to never move plants or live fish away from a water body. And we're going to buy minnows from a Wisconsin bait dealer. Excuse me. All right, next slide. All right, and I'll turn it over to Derek.
Ooh. All right, so now we're going to go through some local and ordinances and some regulations. Next slide, Steph. Okay, so as Kathy just pointed out, one of our big messages that we have is inspect, remove, drain, never move. That is all part of what's classified under NR40. And NR40 actually classifies invasive species into two different categories, prohibited and restricted. Prohibited species are species that um, are either not present in Wisconsin yet or have very low pioneering populations. There are a few in my area. One example is European frogbit. It's a free-floating invasive species. It looks like a small lily pad. That's only known to be off tributaries of Lake Michigan, so hopefully it's not in anybody else's area. Um, but that is one prohibited species. And then most other invasive species that we will see, for the most part, are pretty much restricted at this point if they're aquatic. You can't possess or move either restricted or prohibited species. So just make note of that following, the prevention measures. Next step. Okay, so quick reminder, law enforcement is not part of the Clean Boats, Clean Waters program, but it is handy to know what the laws are. For example, NR19 focuses mostly on water transportation within boats and other recreational watercraft. And then chapter NR30 talks about navigable waters and what is actually like where you can launch, how you can launch, and what is the definition of a actual water body. So just good things to brush up on if you want to, but just remember that law enforcement is not your job. Um, Clean Boats, Clean Waters is around for educational purposes, at least in the state of Wisconsin. Next slide.
Derek,
Okay, so yes.
Have other states adopted clean boats, clean water?
Yes. So there are multiple states that do. I know that there is in Minnesota, at least in Michigan, and then out west as well. There are places like I have a friend that works in Montana that
Mm.
does check stations along highways, and it's the same sort of program, but just more enforcement is done when you're going out there because they have so few invasive species so far. With us being closer to the Great Lakes, we have more of a
Mm.
educational touch because we know that we are pretty much at ground zero for most invasive species.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, Derek,
So, yes.
uh, quick question. What do you do if you are inspecting and say someone, for example, refuses to empty their ballast or, doesn't want to put their fish on ice and they just want to take it in their cooler? What are you supposed to do?
So if they are refusing to like drain their water or anything like that, depending on how um they get an act towards you, it could be a call towards um the warden or another law enforcement agency that's in the area. Um, take it as you will. It is a law that they do have to follow. So it would be a good call to do towards that. Stephanie, Kathy, do you have anything you can add to that as well for that question?
Sure, I can just add that, if you do see violations, we'll be covering that part later in the training as to what to do and what information to take down. Um, if someone's egregiously um, not following the law, we'd encourage that if you can do so safely. So education first, though. But we'll cover more of that later.
I have a question. The last item says you may not transport any live fish away from any state waters. So if somebody catches fish, they must release them back into the water, or they can't take them home.
Put them on ice.
Great question. So, according to the Wisconsin DNR, any fish that is not in water is considered dead. So technically, if you drain your entire live well of water and you just have your fish in there, they are considered dead.
Even if they're flopping around.
Yep.
But as long as they're out of water, that's all they care about.
Mhm.
In terms of draining live wells, are they supposed to be drained before the boat is launched and enters the water, as well as after the boat comes out of the lake?
Correct. Yes.
And when you say drain the live well, where do you want them to drain it? In the lake, on the ground?
Um,
In other words, if I'm sitting at the dock, boat's ready to enter our lake and it has water in it, I'm supposed to have them drain all the water from that boat before they enter the lake?
Yeah.
yes. Before the lake, there are instances where they can get rainwater in there. But if they do have water, most likely it's because it hasn't been drained before. Rainwater is normally just if they didn't pull their whole drain plug for the boat. Um, but if it is coming from the live well port, then that's normally they didn't drain everything beforehand.
So if they're
It-
coming out of the lake, when they pull up and get out of the boat and start strapping it up and getting ready to transport it, that's typically the point when they are draining it, is at that point. They're unplugging the live well, opening the valves, and all the water is rushing out. And that's happening while they're putting on the straps, lowering their lower unit to drain that, and then putting the lower unit back up, taking care of any gear or anything in the boat. That's typically the time and the place that you want them to be draining the water. If they do all of that and they drive away without draining any water, that's when it becomes a problem. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then as far as entering, you're going to want them to not have that water drain into the lake, or before they launch that boat. So somewhere away from the boat landing.
That's what I thought. Okay, thanks.
So, as we've kind of already covered, all water must be drained from boats and equipment. However, there is a special exception to this for bait and minnows. You may use up to 2 gallons to transport minnows and keep them fresh and alive, especially if they're purchased from a bait dealer. You can use leftover bait from any state in any water, just as long as they were in water from the store. Leftover bait may also be used on other waters only if it has not touched specific lake water, or no other fish from, say, that lake have been added to that container. The water needs to be contained within a specific system. Tap water works well too. I have a lot of friends and family that do that. When they come, it just keeps everything clean and orderly, make sure that things doesn't get mixed up. Then, as we touched on before, you can't transport any live fish. Any fish that is out of water is considered dead by DNR standards. So that is the way you can transport those. And then as well, you can't transfer fish eggs away from water bodies as well. Next slide. Okay, so the Clean Boats, Clean Waters program has gone through a couple evolutions. Things first started in 2004 in a high school near Minocqua. I think it was high school, maybe middle school.
Middle school.
Thank you. So throughout this time period, our messaging has changed a little bit, making voters aware of laws. We've moved to a very heavy education aspect, and then we've also been trying to warn voters about penalties for noncompliance and emphasis on law enforcement and data collection. So we'll go over those two things later on in the presentation as well. And then one thing that has come throughout all the changes is we've initiated friendly conversations to help voters understand why the laws exist. So a lot of that friendly conversation comes from how the inspection forms are laid out and how you go through those. We'll be going through that later on in the presentation as well. And going along with our message, we have inspect, remove, drain, never move. Okay, why is all this important? Well, there's little things next to those that explain, why it's important. So you want to inspect all your trailers and equipment, because if you leave something behind accidentally, it can be moved to another water body, and then it's illegal to transport any attached plants or animals. We've already touched on why it's important to drain your water, and then all of that sort of encompasses into you just want to make sure that you don't move anything. And these can all be great education points for when you're talking to voters as well at the landing. Okay, so here's another example of how things have been updated throughout the last 21 years of Clean Boats, Clean Waters. So on the right, we have the old outdated signs. I call them green and white. And then we have our updated Stop Aquatic Hitchhiker sign on the far left side. And then Oneida County also has their own ordinance sign that also updates on specific fines in their area. So if any boat landing where you're doing inspections at have the old outdated green and white signs, or even the yellow and exotic invasive species signs, let us know, and we can help you get those replaced to the current Stop Aquatic Hitchhiker signs on the left. We usually have a few of those in stock, all of us, or there's another DNR representative in the area that will as well.
I have a quick question. Would we be able to get the slide deck after the training?
Yeah, we should be able to do that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And then
Derek?
here is,
Derek,
yes.
can I ask one other question on the signs? Will the DNR only distribute those signs to lakes with public landings, or will you do it in private lakes?
Good question.
Private.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, Steph.
Okay, they could be at private lakes. We encourage any resorts, any businesses that have their own private boat landing to put up the watercraft signs as well. And the DNR supplies us and our partners. So us partners being Kathy and Derek and I, and then other AIS coordinators. We get a supply of them from the DNR, and they are at no cost to you, regardless if it's a public boat landing or a private boat landing. And we can come put them up. So if you have one, you get to your boat landing right after ice out and you see your sign is all shot up. I have that happen every year. Give us a call and we'll put you on the list and come and get you a new boat landing sign. I usually can do mine replacements within a day or two after hearing that a new one needs to be replaced.
Steph,
Mhm.
did you say you can also get the signs for people who rent boats and who sell bait?
Anybody that has a boat landing, any kind of an access, whether it's private or public, can have and should have a sign. So in Wisconsin, every public access has to have that sign at the boat landing. And it should actually be facing the DNR wants it set up so that it's facing the water side when the boat is coming out of the lake that they can see it. However, most of the landings, it's sideways. So people coming in and out can see that regardless. But if somebody has a private access and you know of somebody on your lake that has a private access, you just have a conversation with them and say, hey, you can get a free sign. I can have the county come and help put it up, and it's easy. So yeah.
So, okay, so this is not, this question is about people in the town who sell bait and rent boats, those kinds of things as well.
Uh, Certainly, that's a good question. So we have a couple of different outreach programs. We have a bait shop outreach program, and then
Oh.
a lot of us go to the marinas, and we work with our lake service providers, as Kathy had referred to them earlier. Lake service providers would be the people that install the docks, the boat
Mhm.
lifts. And it's important that we reach out to all these people, especially the lake service providers, because they are going from water body to water body, sometimes multiple water bodies within a day. And it's not only their equipment and boats that we're worried about, but also if they're transporting like a used boat lift from one lake to the next, we need to make sure that they're aware that, hey, the feet on that boat lift could still have sediment piled on it, and stuff like that needs to come off of that boat lift before you deliver it to the next lake. So we do a lot of outreach to these people. The general public typically is not aware of it. But if any of those businesses wants a sign, we can easily get them like a copy that's laminated. We also have specific outreach items that we give our bait shops, which are stickers that they can put on bait buckets and other gear, and then pamphlets. And I like to touch base with our bait shop owners so that they're aware of where the newest AIS has just occurred in a lake. Because when people go to bait shops to buy bait, that's a great place to sit and chat about fishing and what
Right.
heard, who's catching what, where, and what are they catching, what are they using, and so on and so forth. So bait shops have been a great outlet and resource for us to work with as far as having them help to pass on the clean boats, clean waters and the AIS message.
Because the reason I was asking that is because with our lake management plan update this year, I said I would go to the couple of the local bait shops and, give them brochures and stickers and whatever. So it's good to know that there's another an outreach for bait shops and
Absolutely. Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, where are we at here, Derek?
All right. We've had a little bit of time to stare at this, but this is just a quote talking about how we can influence attitudes through contact with people. That is what a lot of the Clean Plates, Clean Waters program is about, is that initial interview process and educating. I still have my entire spiel from 10 years ago in my head about, hi, I'm a Clean Boats, Clean Waters inspector for the Three Lakes Waterfront Association. So that's how I would always start my whole spiel. And that's just, one way we can start to influence attitudes is just being straightforward, nice, and um, just overall in a good mood.
And wear your
And
blue
we'll
shirt.
get the message across. Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to be going over the watercraft inspection process with you here from beginning to end. So as we know, the Northwoods is really rich in water resources, and the impacts of AIS can be extremely detrimental to our waters ecosystems, recreational opportunities, our fisheries, human health, and nearshore property values. Furthermore, they are extremely costly to control, and as Kathy had talked about that already. Um, and then we always have emerging threats of more problematic AIS that are on our doorsteps. So AIS education and Clean Boats, Clean Waters are the key to preventing the introduction of AIS. It only takes a minute to remove a plant, an animal, mud, debris from a boat, trailer, and any equipment, and to drain all the water from the village and live well and bait buckets. And so if people can realize that it's not a task, but it's just something very simple and quick that can be done quickly before they're entering the lake or when they're coming out before they drive home, it makes all the difference in the world. So these simple steps will help keep invasive species from hitching rides from one water body to the next. So with the growing concern over AIS in our inland lakes and throughout the Great Lakes, many of the lake associations and other concerned citizens were looking for ways to get involved with preventing AIS. So I'm going to actually skip. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I am real quickly because Derek already mentioned this. So how did Clean Boats, Clean Waters start? This started back in 2003 with 3 junior high school students from Minocqua who had a science project or a biology project, one of the two, that they had to complete. And all 3 of them lived on Lake Minocqua. And this was at a time when the Eurasian water milfoil in Lake Minocqua had just been introduced. And it was just kind of being introduced all over northern Wisconsin. So we didn't know a whole lot about it at that time. We weren't quite sure how it came in and what impacts it was having on our lakes, and still kind of scratching our heads and figuring things out. But these students decided to do their school research papers on the Eurasian water milfoil, and they wanted to learn how it got there, the impacts it would have to their lakes, and the impacts to the tourism industry within the Minocqua Woodruff area. Very clever on their part. So they did their research, they did their homework, and they learned all about this plant as much as they could. And they discovered that this was coming in on boats and trailers at boat landing. And so not only did they learn about it, but they wanted to take proactive steps to stop it from spreading because they were already seeing the devastating impacts of having this plant in the lake for just a year or 2 at that time. So they decided to become a team called the Milfoil Masters, and they made up these little pamphlets that showed some of the points of their studies, some of the bullet points, and they took their brochures to boat landings all around the Minocqua area and were going on a Saturday and Sunday to the boat landings and talking to the boaters as they were coming in and out about what was going on. And all of a sudden, the lake associations in the area started catching on. And so they were looking for ways, what I was talking about, to help protect their lakes from AIS and, trying to be proactive. So they caught on. They were like, let's join you. So they became milfoil masters as well. Pretty soon, the whole Northwoods was doing milfoil master programs at their boat landing. And then finally, the DNR opened up to this idea that, wow, this is really a wonderful program that we can provide to the whole state. And so the next year in 2004, the DNR started the Clean Boats, Clean Waters program. So here we are. Last year was our 20th anniversary for Clean Boats, Clean Waters, and it is still a very wonderful program to have on board. So through Clean Boats, Clean Waters, the inspectors educate and engage boaters in conversations about AIS prevention steps, how and where AIS are most likely to hitch a ride on a boat or equipment, and how to perform watercraft inspections. Inspectors also hand out educational material. They collect data and keep record of how many people they talked with. The watercraft inspection data that you collect is reported to a statewide database called SWIMS, and that database tabulates both paid and volunteer watercraft inspectors data. So who else is involved in the statewide Clean Boats, Clean Waters program? Well, the DNR is. They maintain the database, which tracks and tallies the information that we collect. And then the home base for the statewide Clean Boats program is through the UW Extension Lakes program. And Aaron McFarland at the UW Extension Lakes program is the statewide Clean Boats, Clean Waters educator. So the proof is in the numbers. So since 2004, Wisconsin's Clean Boats, Clean Waters watercraft inspection program has served as the state's most successful and cost-effective program that is proactive to prevent the introduction and spread of invasive species. So yay! So I'm really impressed with that. I have been a watercraft inspector since 2005, I both on volunteer and paid time, and I am a person who loves to talk to people, and I love our lakes, and it's just been a really good way for me to help do citizen science projects as well. And that's another way you can look at being a watercraft inspector. Not only are you a watercraft inspector, but you're also considered a citizen scientist in Wisconsin. That's pretty cool. So this map is kind of old now. It's a couple years old, but it does indicate where, whoops, here, there we go. Proof is in the number. That's what I was talking about right there. You can see the number of trained inspectors and the number of inspection hours, the watercrafts inspected, and the number of boaters contacted since the Clean Boats, Clean Waters program began in 2004. So that's, the proof is in the numbers right there.
Stephanie,
I'm sorry, yes.
is there any credit or certification that high school students could get for volunteering as part of a science, maybe certification or credit or something like that?
I'm not aware of a credit that our program offers. Kathy, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, so a lot of high schools will say that kids will need a certain amount of hours of community service before they graduate, so I think that might be a good match. The Clean Boats, Clean Waters program recommends that kids be at least 14 before they volunteer. And I would say that on top of that, it's probably dependent on the kid, and their maturity level and how they interact with the public. So, I'd say it's a possibility, but it's probably most appropriate for the older kids. But I don't know of any kind of high school credit program out there, just the community service hours.
Erin McFarland, she's the statewide CBCW coordinator through UW Extension Lakes out of Stevens Point. She would probably have some knowledge of that. If you wanted to reach out to her, that's who I would recommend reaching out to.
Okay, thank you.
So this map here just shows since 2000, from 2004 to 2001, I'm sorry, 2021, where the watercraft inspectors are around Wisconsin. As you can see, the Northwoods here, we've got a lot of red and blue dots. So we've got the blue dots represent volunteer watercraft inspectors, and the red dots indicate where paid watercraft inspectors are at. And then our watercraft inspectors are a wide variety of groups of people and individuals. And you can also tap into organizations like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, 4-H clubs possibly. Who knows, there's so many different organizations out there. I believe Headwaters has done watercraft inspections for this county in the past as well. So, as far as recruiting volunteers, once your group decides that you want to do watercraft inspections, it's really important that you have somebody act as the coordinator for that inspection program, because they will help determine what days and times are best to do the inspections. They're also going to help determine what days are better to do the inspections on. And then you're also going to want to consider how many volunteers do you have and which of the boat landings on your lakes are busiest, and busy during the certain time of year. Are they just busy all summer? And then what again is the busiest time of day? Typically it's Friday night from 4 to 8 p.m. and Saturdays and Sundays could be from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. If you've got boat tournaments going on your lake, you might want to touch base with the tournament coordinator, because they get out on those lakes really early and they may need help inspecting boats. A lot of times those like the bass tournaments, they have people within their organization who do the watercraft inspections already, so we don't have to worry about that. But still, if you know of a tournament on your lake, it's worth calling that tournament organization and seeing if they need help. And then also, when recruiting volunteers, be specific about the amount of time you want them to work. Is it going to be 2 hours a day? Is it going to be 8 hours a day? And then sometimes you might have a boat landing that does not have a bathroom, so that might be in consideration too when you're working with volunteers. So just try and be give them as let them know the expectations, and then what the time reality is going to be that you need them at the landing. And then also you're going to want to let the volunteers know that you appreciate them. So whether it's a picnic or some sort of party, it's always a great way to recognize them and say thank you for the work that you've done. Lots of times they just like having their pictures and names put in your newsletter. Other times you might want to give them a big thanks on a float, a 4th of July float that's going around your lake. Hey, these are our watercraft inspectors. However you do it, please make sure that you do thank them for the work that they do, whether they're paid or volunteer inspectors. So what is involved? You're going to want to prepare for your inspections. If you've never done watercraft inspections before, make sure that you go to the boat landing. First of all, if you're working on a lake that has multiple boat landings, touch base with somebody to see which boat landing might already have coverage, maybe by another organization or a different group. And then what boat landing is the busiest on that lake as well. So for instance, Lake Minocqua, they've got 4 boat landings. The Stacks Bay Boat Landing, the Lake Minocqua Quagga Saga group does not do any participation with watercraft inspections at all at the Stacks Bay Boat Landing. They take care of the other 3 landings in town. So you might want to figure those things out too. And then also, what is the boat traffic like on at that landing? So become familiar with that. So this example that I have here, this is the town landing on Lake Tomahawk. And as you can see, it's really busy. It's kind of crazy. People pull in, and then sometimes they pull off here on the side to start on taking off the straps and the tarps off their boat and whatnot. And then they'll go in there, and then they'll back in and launch there. And then they're going to pull their boat trailer around because they're going to want to park here or sometimes go around and park there. So you're going to have very hazardous areas at boat landings. So you're going to want to be cautious of that too. As you can see, the Lake Tom boat landing has a lot of hazardous areas. It's just crazy how it's set up, but they have to do what they have to work with what they have for property there. Also, when you're doing watercraft inspections, plan on inclement weather with your group and reiterate that they need to take a lawn chair, sunscreen, bug dope, and snacks, and then take their materials with them also that is needed. So we're going to talk about that next. So this is a summary of the materials that you're going to need at the boat landing. So to identify watercraft inspection teams at the boat landing, every inspector should wear the royal blue t-shirt, which we have on here, that says the Clean Boats, Clean Waters on it. And if they do not have some sort of identification like a t-shirt or the apron that has Clean Boats, Clean Waters on it, there are round stickers that say Clean Boats, Clean Waters that you could just put on maybe the back of your clipboard or on your jacket if it's a rainy day, but you need to have some sort of Clean Boats, Clean Waters identification to identify yourself. And then these items can be purchased through the UW Extension Lakes Clean Boats, Clean Waters program, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So at the boat landing, you're going to want to have clipboard and pencil, a copy of a landing script. We'll go over that in a little bit. The watercraft inspection report form, and any prompts that you may have. There are lots of handouts that you can have. For instance, like the Stop Aquatic Hitchhiker brochure. That's this one right here that you see. That is probably the most popular one. We have anglers and regarding minnow and anglers stickers. There's fishing with bait brochures and stickers that we have. A couple other things you might want to have is a list of the lakes in your county with AIS. And one reason you may probably going to want that is because during the watercraft inspection process, you're asking them, has this boat been on a different water body in the last 5 days? And if they say yes, then we ask them what water body that was. And if it's a lake that you know of, hey, this lake is in Forest County, it's Lake Matonga, it's got zebra mussels, you're going to want to then stop that process and really pull up your sleeves and do a much better inspection and education with that boater as well. Hey, do you realize that Lake Matonga has zebra mussels? And what did you do when you came out of Lake Matonga? Was anybody there to help decontaminate your boat? Did you clean it thoroughly? So on and so forth. So that's a reason to have a list of AIS in your county. And then also, you're going to want to have a cell phone and local contacts for emergencies and the DNR Conservation Warden's 1-800 number. You're also going to want to take a plastic bag, maybe a permanent marker, and plastic bags, and then also a trash bag. Plastic bags and a permanent marker are helpful to have in case you have some downtime and you're looking in the shallow water and, oh my gosh, is that a piece of Eurasian water milfoil? You can collect a potential sample, put your name and phone number on it, and turn it into the DNR. So that's a nice reason to have plastic bags. Also, to pick up garbage if you've got downtime, a good way to help your boat landing is to help keep it clean. So our Clean Boats, Clean Water supplies, there's a ton of useful online resources available to aid you in the AIS outreach efforts. So the UW Extension Lakes Clean Boats, Clean Waters website has the Clean Boats, Clean Waters handbook. It's got the data forms, outreach supplies, and all the publications you could possibly want. Many of these resources are available also through us, partners that you work with. And then we recommend that at least one resource kit be for every landing. And a resource kit is the contents. It's a bag that you can get. I'll go right here to the next slide. This is the resource kit right here. And that is from the UW Extension Lakes program. And that resource kit contains a couple t-shirts. It has the handbook in it, and then all kinds of resources in it. And I believe it's got an apron in it as well. And that is something that you can just simply hand off to the next person that's coming on duty at the boat landing. So let's see here. Where am I at? Go here. So these resources, as I said, are from the UW Extension Lakes program. And I've got the link here. Kathy, what we'll do is we'll send you this information with the links available on there so that you can easily find them.
Seth, if I can interrupt the, I'll send the link to the t-shirt order. I'll just put it in the chat.
Okay, there you go. Perfect.
Okay.
And then there are, I get asked quite a bit, well, how do you and your team keep all of those pamphlets and handouts and brochures and your forms and all that all that stuff together at the boat landing without having to get impacted by humidity and rain. And so this toolbox right here is a very inexpensive toolbox from Menards and Home Depot that I got. And it's the perfect size to fit a clipboard. It's perfect size on the bottom to fit the clipboard with all of your data sheets and brochures and maps and whatever. And then the top compartment there is a handy space for these little identification cards that we have available for you as well. As you can see, the Lake Thompson Lake Association, they spent a little bit of money buying this nice tent for their watercraft inspectors. And that has lasted them many, many years. And it looks really great at the boat landing too. So to get started, so what exactly is involved with doing the watercraft inspections? So the duties include educating boaters about AIS and how they are spread, assisting boaters with their inspections on the boat and the equipment, and collecting the data and reporting the data as well. So when to start the watercraft inspections? So you're going to want to make sure, first of all, that you have a watercraft inspection form and clipboard handy so that you can record all of the information about that boater. Always, always, always approach the boaters with a smile on your face. Be polite and be courteous and listen to their concerns. And if I always find having a smile on my face, I think most of us just typically do that anyway, but it always starts that inspection process out in a fashion where we're non-threatening to that boater.
I like to talk sports.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And with that regards too. So if you happen to, if you're an angler and you see that they're coming in with a bass boat or lots of fishing rods and fishing gear, talk fishing to them and talk AIS that might impact their fishing opportunities on that lake. If they come in, say, with inner tubes and different recreational toys, talk with them about how AIS might just impact that specific type of recreational activity too.
I also tell them that there's no fish on Forest Lake.
I've been known to say, boat landing? I didn't know that lake had a boat landing. I'm joking. When to do the inspection process. So if the boat is launching, approach the boater as they are unstrapping that boat, but before they actually launch it into the lake. Oftentimes you, like during the 4th of July holiday, you might have a boat landing where there's lots of boats lined up waiting to launch. And that is a really good time to just go through them. Bing, 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 bing. They don't have to be right at the boat landing. Just make sure that you've always done the boat that's at the boat landing and just go on ahead down the line and get those inspections done during that process. They're just sitting there waiting to go in. So it's usually a really good time to have an AIS conversation with them anyway. So if they're taking out of the lake, wait for that boater to get up onto that landing area. And they're, like I said before, they're going to get out, start strapping up their boat, putting all their gear and fishing stuff away. And kids are hungry, they're screaming, they want to go home, they've got dirty diapers. So you do want to make it fast so that they can get in and out of there. Don't do a lot of over talking, just make it a very simple process so that they can go ahead and get on their way. If they are not, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a little bit, but if you see that they're not letting the water out, like they don't pull the drain and they don't lower that lower unit, and you can tell or hear that that live well is full of water, if there's fish splashing around in there, splash, 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 and they then quickly get in their car and drive away, that's at a point where they potentially have a violation and have not drained that water in that boat landing. And there again, we're going to talk about that in just a little bit as well. And then also, if the boater is not interested in talking with you, just try and maybe hand them in some educational material if they want. Otherwise, just say, hey, just remember to inspect your boat, remove anything that's attached, doesn't belong on there, and have a great summer. You certainly don't want to have somebody get mad at you and create a situation.
Stephanie,
So, yes.
Question. When you approach them, one thing that we had people do, just in case things got out of hand, is that we just casually on the swim sheet write down the boat registration and their license plate.
Ah.
Just, I mean, I've never used it. I've never had to reference it. But if you had somebody get completely nasty on you and you had to report them,
Yeah.
you've got their boater ID, their boat identification, and their license plate.
Yeah.
Great
But
idea.
that's not illegal or anything, is it? I mean, it's
No, not at all.
okay. Okay, I just wanted to bring that up.
Is it okay if I add some 2 cents there, Steph?
Yep, go right ahead.
And I think it's not necessarily a bad practice by way of personal safety, but if boaters know that you're doing it, it totally changes the flavor of the conversation. So just something to think about if you want to keep your interactions friendly and educational. Um, it's probably not something you want to advertise.
No, and we never did it overtly. We would have the one person saying, hey, welcome, and, start the conversation. And the person with the clipboard was walking up behind them and then just casually doing it. So no, it was never overtly, or you never were asking them or telling them to move over so you could see their license plate or anything like that.
Very good points. Thank you. So always introduce yourself and mention the organization that you're with and why you are at the boat landing. And then as you're going through the inspection process, the first thing you're going to do is ask them if you can ask them just a quick question. And then the next step is ask if they're familiar with aquatic invasive species prevention steps that are required by law, such as draining water from boats, live wells, and equipment. You know what? Hold on one second. My slides are out of order here. And then I'm going to back up here. Hold on one second. So we need to rearrange these slides so that people can see the watercraft inspection form that we are talking about. And I apologize about that. So on the watercraft inspection form, the first question is, has the boater been contacted by a watercraft inspector yet this season? And then the second question is, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? And then the third question is, have you had this watercraft in another water body in the last 5 days? And it's that particular watercraft is what you're talking about, not their buddy's boat that they're with and not another boat, but that particular watercraft. And if it is, has been on another water body in the last 5 days, that's when you're going to want to ask them what lake that was on and what county, if they know it, and then the state that they were in. Because we might have 5 rice lakes in the Northwoods. Let's see here. And then you're also going to want to engage the boater in the watercraft inspections too. So ask if they'll join you in the inspection process as you go around their boat. So as I'm going around the boat, I'm talking about the different inspection processes that I'm going through and explaining why I'm looking at that. Hey, we've got, your boat has bunkers on it or rollers. Bunkers have the carpet on there that catches a lot of debris and plants, and that's a good way for an invasive species to hitch a ride to another water body. And so I would explain that process to them as I'm looking under the boat, looking at the bunkers and explaining that to them. And then I always ask them if they don't mind if I pull that piece of vegetation off that I see maybe hanging in that bunker. So make sure that you pass along that final message, which is inspect your boat, trailer, and equipment. Remove any attached aquatic plants and animals and mud. Now, that is the key word right there, is aquatic. Remove, I'm going to back you up. Remove any attached aquatic plants. It can be a terrestrial plant. It could be pine needles, pine cones in their boat. It doesn't matter. But if it's an aquatic plant, that has to come off. Some people may have had their boat stored behind their shed for a couple of years, so it's got moss growing in it, and they didn't bother to clean it beforehand. It doesn't matter. That can still go in the lake. But make sure that any aquatic vegetation is removed from the boat, the trailer, any gear, fishing lines, and then you're going to want to get them involved in the inspection process as well.
Anchors can hold mud and aquatic and
Yep.
and species too.
Yep, and we'll get to that too. So make sure that you do thank them and wish them a good season, whether it's fishing or recreating, whatever. And do remember that you only have about 30 seconds to complete these tasks, so you have to move it really fast. So here I'm just going to go over sharing the prevention steps with you. And how to get the boater involved. So make sure that you're walking around the boat during the conversation. This is an efficient way to include the boater in that discussion. So the data form, like I mentioned before, is designed to help lead you through the discussion with the boater by providing questions and prompts. We'll go over that data form again in a few minutes. So note, as you're talking, walk around that boat and look for the aquatic plants, animals, any sand and mud that might be on that boat equipment trailer. So as I'm approaching the boater, I say, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Stephanie. I'm a volunteer watercraft inspector from Pelican Lake. I'm helping boaters learn about how they can prevent aquatic invasive species and how they can help check their boats for aquatic invasive species and prevent them from spreading as well. We're trying to keep zebra mussels and Eurasian water milfoil out of this lake, and those are some of the invasives in the area that are harmful. So we certainly don't want to have them come into this lake, which currently does not have those invasives. Then I'm going to go through the form. Have you been contacted by a watercraft inspector yet this season? Yes or no? Are you willing to answer a few questions? Yes or no? And there again, was the boat used in the past 5 days on a different water body? The answer is yes. Ask them where. And then as I'm walking around the boat, I continue by saying Wisconsin law requires boaters to take the following steps when leaving the boat landing. Step number 1 is to inspect your boat, trailer, and equipment and remove anything that doesn't belong. Have you heard of this before? And make sure you drain all the water from your boat, your vehicles, and equipment. Ask them if they have any questions. If you can tell that they're an angler, make sure that they've drained the water from their live well, and make sure that the lower unit on their boat motor is going down, and they do that to drain the water out of that lower unit, and then they'll put it back up as right before they drive away. Otherwise that lower unit's going to bang on the ground. So I ask them if they have live bait. If yes, then I say, I ask them if the live bait has come in contact with any of the water, the lake or river water, because it can only be reused on that same water body. And if not, then it needs to be discarded. So for instance, what this law means is, say, for instance, you were on Two Sisters Lake all morning and you had gone on that lake with a fresh bucket of minnows. And we're going to just throw out that Two Sisters Lake has spiny water fleas. So you were using, which it does not, but that's just scenario. So say you were using a minnow out of your bait bucket and you were casting it out all morning, and it didn't get eaten by a fish. You didn't hook a fish with it. So you decided to put it back into your minnow bucket and take out another minnow, put it on your hook, and cast that line out too. But what you may not have realized is those minnows, when they were under the water, they may have gotten spiny water fleas under their gills. So if you're taking them out of that water body and putting them back into your bait bucket, that is considered contaminating that entire bait bucket. And spiny water fleas are small, so you probably are not realizing that that is happening. The same thing, say during the middle of the day, the bait bucket gets warm, the water gets warm. So you put it in the lake and you're refreshing that bait bucket with nice cool lake water. There again, you could be contaminating that entire bucket with that water. So therefore, if I were going to be going to another lake that day, say Tom Doyle Lake, and I've just used all of that bait and that has had contact with that first lake, that lake water, I need to go get fresh bait before I go to Tom Doyle Lake. Because if I take a minnow out of that bait bucket, I put on a hook, and I cast that out into Tom Doyle Lake, I'm potentially spreading those spiny water fleas now into Tom Doyle Lake. And that's how easy something like that can get transported with bait buckets. And that's the same principle with live wells too. So we need to make sure that live wells are drained. We're not only looking for insects, but we're also looking for diseases that potentially be in there, like viral hemorrhage septicemia. So we certainly do not want that lake water in that live well mixing in another lake with new lake water. So that's kind of a scenario I throw out to people when they don't understand the bait laws, and it seems to be really easy for them to remember that then. Any questions with this, people, before I move on? Okay. And then you can offer them the Stop Aquatic Hitchhiker stickers. So, and also a brochure that we have. So this sticker here was designed to go on the winch post right there. And that's because every time they're unloading their boat or loading the boat up on the trailer, they're right there at that winch. So it's a really good reminder right there to of the steps that they need to take to be proactive. And if you see that they have one on there that's starting to peel off, offer them a fresh one. So where do we look on the boat? We look everywhere. Before launching and before leaving, inspect everything that has come in contact with the water or sediment. So this sheet that I have right here on the right-hand side, that is in the Watercraft Inspection Handbook, and it's also as a standalone form on the UW Extension's website too. And this helps as a good reminder of all the places that you need to inspect your boat. So under the bunkers, under the frame, under behind license plates, under the wheel wells, the winches, the ropes, bait buckets, fishing line, landing nets, tackle, you name it, anything that's been in contact should be inspected. Don't touch the boat, but you can certainly inspect with your eyes. So here's just more examples of how things can get attached. And so as mentioned already here, the anchor is a great place to look for invasives, because if you've got a dirty anchor in your boat, there could very well be something in there. So just think of that. So if you have used that anchor in Lake A and you bring it up and you plunk it down in your boat, you don't really pay attention to the plants that are on it or the sand or muck, and then you go to Lake B that day or the next day and you lower that anchor down, you're releasing whatever is on that anchor at that time, which could potentially be an invasive species. As you can see here, this disastrous picture of the zebra mussels on that prop. I hope we don't ever have that happen to us. And of note, there are no zebra mussel infested waters in Oneida County. The closest water body with zebra mussels is in Forest County on Lake Matonga. So what else gets inspected? Well, inflatable toys are notorious for trapping water and sediment and sand. I had an inner tube like this one here that had sand and water in it, like in the middle of October when I went to deflate it and store it away from the winter. I'm like, oh my gosh, that still has all the sand and muck in it. That was trapped in there all year. So you often see the travelers who might live in town come out to the lake for a hot summer day and they've got their inner tubes already blown up, and you really want to ask them, hey, has that been in another water body? And if it is, we need to dry that out before that goes into this lake. So make sure that you have them dry that out like in between the cover and that tube. And then also, as you can see down here in between the tube chambers of this inflatable boat and this other inner tube, stuff can get trapped in there like crazy. Canoes and kayaks, all those watercrafts, fishing kayaks, they all have to follow the exact same regulations across the board. This is a picture of me up in Ontario on a canoe trip. I've just gone over a beaver dam, and that muck that I'm transporting in my canoe is now going into another lake. That's not good. Other things that you're going to want to just mention, muskie hunters, muskie anglers use bucktails like this one here of mine. And if that's been hanging around in a water body like Trout Lake where there's spiny water fleas, if you've been trolling with something like that, it could potentially have some spiny water fleas or zebra mussel veligers or a small piece of a plant stuck underneath those feathers. And it's hiding because that is a really dense material that's over that hook. So a lot of stuff can get trapped up there. If you're fishing like I am here in the upper right-hand corner, a lot of times anglers just take that is actually Eurasian water milfoil out of Hancock Lake. They'll just take it, throw it off. kind of throw it into the lake, but half of it might go into the lake, the other half might go onto the carpet of your boat. So you're going to want to make sure that the boats, if they're, whether they're carpeted or wood floors, that they are clean as well from any plants or sand and muck. And obviously shoes, these waders are notorious for catching muck and who knows what might be trapped under muck. Yellowstone National Park has outlawed felt sole waders for the fly fishermen because they are notorious for transporting invasive species on those felt soles. And then also the propellers and the propulsion ports here on the jet skis. So getting water out of those is really simple. They just have to turn that on for a minute and turn the jet ski on for a minute, just purge that out. The boat motors here, the outboard motors, when the boater is leaving the boat landing, when they're strapping on all of their equipment, they're usually lowering their boat motor. And that's because the water gets trapped in that propeller area and the lower unit. So lowering that allows that water to drain. And then, like I said earlier, before they leave, they're going to then put that that motor back up into position so that they can drive away and not have that lower unit hit the ground. Wake boats are a good indicator for, as I think most of us know, for transporting aquatic invasive species. There's a potential to have invasives in there or native species as well, viruses, different organisms. The lake water can mix in with whatever's in there and then come back out into that lake. So that's a really tough concern. I know Kathy deals more with a whole decontamination than I do. And so maybe Kathy, can you give some insight on what people up in Vilas are doing right now with attempting to get water out of the wake boats? I don't know if Kathy's there.
Yeah, so
It's a tough question.
it is a tough question. So, I mean, if you're a Clean Boats, Clean Waters inspector and you're seeing a wake boat going from one lake to the other, first off, when it comes to our decontamination program, we can flush those ballasts. And depending on, what kind of plastic they're made of, typically we just turn down our temperature and increase our contact time. So it does take upwards of 10 minutes for us to decontaminate those ballast tanks. We don't want to melt them. Those boats are very, very expensive. uh, Otherwise, if you don't have the option of decontamination, um, they can flip the switch to drain their live wells. Depending on the type of ballast tank that they have, they may be able to physically remove like a bladder that is holding the water and further drain it. That's not always an option though. And there is a a resource for schematics of all these different some of the more popular wake boats, but it will also that's on the sorry the oh my goodness, WSIA. I'll put the link in there in a little bit here, so you can have that as a resource. The only other thing I'd say that is when it comes to types of boats that we encounter, even with the boat decontamination program, it's much more rare to see the wake boats going from lake to lake. And, it's much more common to see fishing boats going from lake to lake. So, that is something to consider as well. So we just do the best we can. It's not reasonable to ask someone to bust out their wrenches and screwdrivers every time they're at the landing. We're not asking anyone to take their boat apart. But if it's something that can easily be removed, like a bladder, I think it's okay to ask. But it's hard to know what someone's working with unless you're very familiar with the type of boat. So.
Yeah, and I think the key there was reasonable best management practices too, the best to their ability and your ability at that time and location. So live wells also are lots of different forms of live wells here, which can be a pain to drain as well. So the one in the lower left-hand corner, as you can see, the drain hole is actually up on the side. Why the manufacturer put it there, I don't know. The one on the lower right there is mine. It looks like it's lowered, but it's not. It's actually raised. It drives me nuts because I always have a constant pool of water in the bottom there. So I've really got to work at getting that soaked up because it just does not drain. And I hope that the manufacturers are getting more smarter with this so that they make the drain holes on live wells easier for all of that water to drain. And certainly bait buckets here. We got to be concerned that a bait bucket might be contaminated if it's got water in it. So there again, you got to have that discussion with them about bait. Hey, has this bait bucket been in another water body within, last couple of days because we're concerned, that there might be an invasive trapped in there. And then as Derek mentioned earlier, the live well has to be drained. But fish on ice are the safest to take home and they'll keep your catch nice and fresh as well. So they might be flopping around in that live well, but hey, if you let them do that, they're fine as long as they're out of water. Keep them on ice. That's considered legal as well. And that's actually the preferred method for taking fish home is on ice. There are some prompts that we have. If boaters are not familiar with the prevention steps or have questions, you can help them understand the reasons for taking these actions. So you can use this prompt to assist you in your explanation and discussions at the boat landing. So remember, the goal is to make this as relevant as possible to the boater by localizing the issues through your conversation. So this form here was developed for you to kind of make as your own local issues that you might want to make a point with, if it's an angler, if it's a water ski or a jet ski or whatever. So these are also available from the UW Extension Lakes, and I don't think that is in the handbook, but we can certainly get these products to you as well. So things to remember, just don't touch the vehicle, boat, trailer, and equipment without that boater's permission. Let them know where your hands are at all times and keep your hands in, so they can see them so they don't think that you're maybe messing with their equipment when in fact you're just kind of looking in their boat. I personally like to help people remove things on their boat. So if they've been out in the water all day, they're tired, they're usually sunburned, there's vegetation on the bottom of their boat, they want to get home. I'm like, hey, I can see that clearly. Do you mind if I crawl under there? Blah, blah, blah. And they're like, go right ahead, go for it. And then I also have a reacher tool that I will often have with me at the boat landing. I thought I had one close at hand, but I don't. So one of those long reacher tools that you might use to pick up like pop cans or something like that, those are very handy to have at the boat landing as well. And I also want to tell you something here. I'm going to back up real quickly here to the boat propellers. So this picture here of the zebra mussel boat, the boat propeller covered in zebra mussels. What I have in my toolbox is a tool that I use that I get for a couple bucks at the hardware store that will reach down in between, down deep into that propeller. And the reason I do that is because during my inspection, I'm actually looking down in that propeller. I have a flashlight in my pocket. I pull it out. I look down in that propeller and I'm looking for any vegetation. There's usually fishing line down in there, and they're like, hey guys, before you launch it here or before you leave, you need to get this vegetation out of your prop. And typically they're like, oh, we don't have vegetation down there. And I'm like, yes, you do, with a whole lot of fishing line in it too. And they may say, oh, no wonder the boat wasn't running right. So over the years, guys have been going in their trucks then to get screwdrivers or a hanger or some type of a tool to get all of that vegetation and grub from out of their prop. But what I found works the best is this tool, and I thought I had one here. It is a hair removal tool that I get at the hardware store. So it's a little, oh, I wish I knew the name of it offhand. It's a little tool. It's got, kind of like a little bristly edge on it that you use to get hair out of a sink faucet or a bathtub drain. Not sink faucet, a sink drain hole or a bathtub drain. So it's just a skinny little thing and it fits down into that propeller there very, very nicely. And if you just put it down in there and turn it a couple of times, that will get all of that vegetation and muck out. Now, what I usually do though is at that point, I don't want to do that myself. I don't want to touch somebody else's propeller because they could be very expensive. So I said, I have a tool on hand that I'd like you to use that will help you get that out. And they usually don't mind taking that, getting that stuff out, and then get it out, give the tool back to me, and then they're on their merry way.
So Steph, I've got they're called pipe brushes, I think.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. Small bottle brushes work well too.
Thank you. The same thing. Yeah. Yeah. I need to put that in this presentation here. So, okay, where were we? Okay, so things to remember here. Don't allow the inspection to get confrontational. You will encounter frequent lake hoppers. I know a lot of you that are doing watercraft inspections on smaller, quieter lakes. You're probably going to be really busy at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, and that's because most of the visitors on your lake aren't really visitors. They're residents who've just taken their boat out of storage for the winter. They're launching it for the spring, and that's the only water body that that boat is on for the whole year, and they don't take it out till the fall. So we get a lot of busy times right away in the spring and the fall because of that. And let's see here. So other things that you can do is if somebody has a very dirty boat, you can have them go to a local car wash before they put that in. If they've got a lot of lake muck and sand on there, you don't want them to put that boat in that lake that they're trying to launch in. They really need to get that clean. So whatever that process takes, they need to do that, whether it's just getting some lake water on some rags, wiping it down, or taking it to a car wash if it's extremely dirty. That's what has to be done. Whatever measures they need to do that. And you do make a difference. And we can tell by 20 years of doing watercraft inspections, and we've been doing a fantastic job. You have been doing a fantastic job at preventing the introduction and spread of invasive species. So thank you very much for doing that. So I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay. So number one, just as a refresher here, to determine the boat landing ownership and have a updated AIS signage. Make sure that you're at the boat landing during the optimal time. Develop some sort of plan to recruit volunteers and paid watercraft inspectors. Get them trained by us. Make sure that you have your watercraft inspection gear on or some way to identify you that you are a watercraft inspector for the Clean Boats, Clean Waters program. And then make sure that you keep that report on record, the data that you collect. That data has to somehow go into the SWIMS database. So typically the coordinator of your lake's Clean Boats, Clean Waters program is typically the person that would enter that data. So you might want to figure out, who do I need to give this completed data form to, so that that person can then enter that data into SWIMS. Sometimes it's the watercraft inspector themselves, but we'll go over the SWIMS in just a little bit here. And we're going to go into data collection now, and I believe that is Derek.
I'm back. Okay, so why do we collect all this data and where does it go and what is it used for? So Clean Boats, Clean Waters data provides a snapshot of what's going on around our lakes. It can determine travel patterns. I have a representation of that in a few slides. And then Clean Boats, Clean Waters grants are sort of like a stepping stone to bigger, more elaborate grants within the surface water grant system. So they can be used for planning grants and local ordinance reviews. The data that you get from those can be used for those. And then a nice thing about the Clean Boats, Clean Waters grants are they can sort of give your lake group a sort of a backbone and saying like, hey, we can complete grants, let's try another one and see where it goes. So that's sort of why they can be useful. Next slide. Okay, so we've talked about this sheet. We wished it was up earlier in the presentation, but here it finally is. This is the watercraft inspection report form. We will go through this section by section in the next few slides. But the top has where you enter in all of your uh, uh, personal information. So the inspector's name, date, time, the hours spent by paid inspectors versus volunteers, and then just the lake information and county information. Steph mentioned the first question earlier was about entering or leaving, and have you been contacted by an inspector this season? And then there's a few further questions of are you willing to answer a few questions, yes or no? If they say no, then that's pretty much where your interview ends, and you don't push the issue, just respect that they don't want to be interviewed that day. But if they do say yes, then you want to ask that question, was your boat used on any other water body in the last 5 days? Yes or no. Typically, the don't know section is there for if it's usually a rental, or many times it can be somebody using their friend's boat. So that's pretty much why that category is there. At least that's the most typical explanation I get for the I don't know where it's been. It's my buddy's boat, or I just picked it up from a rental. And then the number of people contacted, that number is the amount of people in the party that can understand what you're saying. So even, somebody around 10 or 12, if they're intently listening or around the area, you can mark them down as people contacted. It also helps you keep track of, if you have a busy day, of who goes to what boat and if you've seen that boat before. And then the final section of the sheet is just prompts of how to go through your interviewing process, asking to remove any plants and drain the live well and everything. And then also talking about the bait message for using live bait while fishing. Next slide.
How come in the questions you ask where you've been in the last 5 days, but nobody ever asks where they're going? So the boat's coming out and they're heading to Trout Lake now. Wouldn't you want that information in addition to where they've been in the last 5 days and potential of where they're going? And then if they're going to Trout Lake, it's the next comment is, do you know that lake has spiny water fluid?
Can I tackle that one, Derek?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, that is an excellent question, Anne. And we've thought long and hard about this at our department for purposes of decontamination and what kind of impact we're actually having with this sort of programming, and how important it could be to have that information. Now, the problem with that is that it didn't actually happen yet.
Yeah.
So who knows what's going to happen? Can we take people's word on this? And what are we going to be doing with the data? So
Okay.
from a statewide level, to ask someone where they're headed, it's a little wishy-washy if you're going to hang your hat on something. However, if we have a robust enough Clean Boats, Clean Waters program, we can catch them with the Clean Boats inspector at Trout Lake. Does that make sense?
No, it totally does. And I think that to the layperson, like the volunteers you're talking to, it's a data and science issue. And you are basically basing your science on the lake that you're entering and where you've come from. And therefore it doesn't overlap then when you go to trout. But it's a conversation that I think is still important for the volunteer to have. So are you going
100%
somewhere
agreed.
else? Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to Palmer Lake. Do you know that is filled with Eurasian water milfoil? And, because it's relatively new, and if they haven't been up here, they'll be like, what? And it may stop them from going to an infested lake or think twice about it.
Yeah, so I think having the conversation is perfectly good and very much appropriate, but we're not taking down the data.
Yeah, okay. that just wanted to.
Good suggestion.
Mhm. Okay, so going forward, here's more of a zoomed in view of the top section of data sheet. So as I mentioned before, you have your inspector's name, the date, the time, um, to the nearest, is it half hour or quarter hour that they can enter? I can't remember. And then you have your distinction between paid hours and volunteer hours, and then the water body name and landing code, the county and the landing location. So all of that data gets entered into swims for sort of saying, you know, where you were for the day, and here's where all of this information has been um, being collected from. Next slide.
It's a quarter of the hour too, Derek.
Okay. So then here's an example of a perfectly filled out sheet. So they have a boat that's entering. They have not been contacted by an inspector this season, so it must be earlier in the season. Normally, that's what you see, typically right around opening weekend. The first part of June, you'll get a lot of no's. Further on in the year, you'll get a lot of yeses if they've been contacted, especially if they keep coming back to your landing. Are you willing to answer any questions? They have that marked as yes. And then has your water body or has your boat been in any other water bodies in the last 5 days? They have that marked as yes. And then they took down the information of where they were, the lake and the county. So that's an example of that section there. And next slide. So then that prompt side, just make sure you go through the prompt, and after a while you can kind of make it your own, just as long as it makes sense to yourself and the board you're interviewing. But you want to go through the following steps. So you want to make sure that you inspect the boat, trailer, and any equipment, and then you want to go through the spiel of why it's important to drain the boat from, or drain water from the boat and the live well and any other equipment that might hold water. Ask if they have any questions, and then you want to go through that bait message, and then you want to check underneath the trailer and the boat for any possible hanging invasive species that could be lying around, like we've talked about before. Next slide. So here's another example of a perfectly filled out sheet.
Wow.
And the one thing that I like about these is that they actually have the totals on the bottom. And then they've taken and totaled up from all of their sheets. So they have 3 total sheets. They've taken each page and totaled them up on the side there. I found that really helpful and useful when I was a Clean Boats, Clean Waters inspector. And then they also have on the top left there when they entered that data into swims, so they aren't double counting their data that's going in. Just some helpful tips that can be done while you guys are out doing your inspections.
Derek,
Yes.
how many years do you have to keep these data sheets?
I believe on the grant form it says up to 6 years, and that can
Right.
be in a electronic form, so you can scan all the data sheets and have them on like a jump drive or your computer hard drive, or you can keep them in a folder somewhere, just as long as you have access to them along with your grant application.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Do we want to talk about
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry, I couldn't get myself off
Sure.
of mute. On the form, so the volunteer total hours, if there's 2 of us standing at the boat launch for 2 hours, do we get to mark 4 hours or just 2 hours?
Yes, you can mark that as 4 hours.
Oh, so each person's total time.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
That's one thing that changed a few years ago, where they found safety in numbers to be an important thing. And, you know, husband and wife duos would go out and do monitoring together. So why not count the hours as long as there's inspectors there? It's well worth it. They're both putting in their time, and they're both technically a volunteer for the grant program. if they are not a paid inspector.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yep.
I also want to mention too, real quickly, that if your lake association does not have any grants, whether you don't want one this year or you've just never had any, I still encourage you to put that data into swims, because we want to know what's going on your lake also. And then down the line, say if your lake was to get like Eurasian water milfoil, and now all of a sudden you need a rapid response grant to help manage that Eurasian water milfoil. If we've got that Clean Boats, Clean Waters data in there, we're going to kind of know the traffic at your boat landing, and that is going to help give you a little bit more brownie points for some grant applications as well when they are going to be rated by the DNR. So
Mhm.
anyway,
And
I
if
have
you
a few lakes
and if you
in.
go after surface water grants for, let's say, a lake survey, your Clean Boat, Clean Water hours can contribute to the volunteer time for the in-kind portion of those grants. And I'm on lakes without public landings, so we can go after surface water grants. We can't go after remediation grants, but all our swims times is in there.
yeah, that's true
Sure.
for any surface water grant.
Mhm.
Your time is towards that grant as in-kind match.
Mhm. And I have lakes in my area that don't go for a Clean Boats, Clean Waters grant at all. And it's just 100% volunteer time. I call it sort of like a grassroots Clean Boats, Clean Waters. Those lakes, even though they don't show up in the database as getting a grant accepted, they still make sure they do all the steps and get all their trainings in and follow all the rules and enter in all their data. So they don't have the grant. They just do it as 100% volunteer. It's great for the Clean Boats Clean Waters program. On my end, yeah, it's a little hard to figure out who's staying up to date on their trainings, but as long as I know that the lake is still doing it, it works out. There's just that communication uh, barrier that you have to get through with your local AIS coordinator and the lake association. So as long as that stays good, then by all means, if you don't want to apply for a grant, you don't have to. Do we want to go through entering swims data, especially the front half here, since that's going to be changing in the next couple of days, or what do we want to do here?
Maybe just a quick overview. Okay.
Okay. So the first slide will be changing. There'll be a different login screen, but this slide will be the same. So this is what you'll see when you log into Swims to enter your data. This is where all of our statewide water quality, water chemistry data, Clean Boats, Clean Waters data, this is where all of this gets entered and compiled. There are two ways to enter data into Swims. You can either click the My Projects tab or Submit Data. Either one, after a couple more clicks, will send you to the next screen. So once you get to this next screen, you want to make sure you have the right project in mind. A lot of these will be preloaded. You want to enter your name. The thing that you're mostly going to have to find is the right station. You'll just have to click the drop down arrow and then enter in the date as well. If you can't find the right things for any of these, you can click the find buttons that are located to the right of each drop down, and then you just have to do a little bit of typing to find the right thing. One thing that I do like to mention a lot is sometimes the right form doesn't show up. So that is, I believe, the most current form. I don't think it's been updated since then. And if it has, the only thing that's different between the one that's on there and the most current one is the URL on the bottom of the sheet is different. But the numbers are all, the form itself is all the same. Next slide. Okay, so once you go through sort of the basic information of where you were, your personal information, name, things like that, then you go into the more form section. So these are the same questions that you wrote down on your inspection form. So the time spent by paid inspector, let's say 8 hours. There wasn't a volunteer at the landing that day. 6 boats were entering, 4 boats were leaving. You just want to copy the full data inspection form right into the SWIMS form here, and it's all the same questions, all the same answers. You're basically just copy and pasting the written data form into the computer. And then you want to click if there were any lakes and rivers visited, like we have seen in the previous slides. You want to enter in that data by clicking the orange button. And if there isn't any data like that, as if nobody went anywhere else or they didn't give you that information, then you just click save and return or save. Okay, so after you've entered in all this data, this is kind of where it all goes and what it all means, how it all gets tabulated. So you can find this information off of the Clean Boats, Clean Waters website, off of the DNR Clean Boats, Clean Waters website. There's 2 different websites. The DNR site compiles all of the stats. So you can find each individual question you asked is tabulated into statistics. You can find all of that throughout the year. And then you can also see the number of total boats inspected for the last 3 years in each county that has had a grant as well. So you can see here that I've got a screenshot of some boat projects in O'Connell County for the last 3 or so years. It's kind of neat when all this comes together, and it really makes it feel like you're doing something, and you can see, you know, the 20 long years of data that has been collected throughout the whole state.
These are great, great pieces of data to include in your newsletters too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this next one talks about earlier on in the presentation, I talked about how border traffic can move from place to place. So I have a lake in one of my counties that's very close to a few lakes in Vilas County. So on the left side, I have Butternut Franklin Lake shown here. So everybody that went that ended up going to Butternut Lake was at a few different lakes in Vilas County and one in Oneida County. So pretty much covering our own territory. So that's why it's good to keep track of where boats are going and where they're coming from. Butternut Franklin is a big 1,000-acre lake. So it's going to draw a few people to that from all over the area. It's also a great part of the national forest in that area as well. So yeah, boats can travel from place to place. Next slide. Here's another representation. I call this the clock map. So this, I believe, is Lake Minocqua in Oneida County. Again, another very popular lake and lake area of the state in northern Oneida County. So all of those dots and lines are boats traveling to that one specific lake in the last 5 days of whenever this map was created. So it just shows that boats do travel. I've seen another map of boats traveling through Canada from Florida in 24 hours. So people move when they go on vacation and want to recreate quite a bit. So things can come from all over, not just inside Wisconsin, but yet outside the state as well. And I believe Kathy's going to talk about the next couple of video sections here that we have.
Yeah, thanks very much. And Steph, would you mind, depending on how you've set this up, you may need to optimize for sound and video to reshare. But could we play video number 1, the complete watercraft inspection on that website? Or do you want me to do it myself? Should I share it?
If you whoops,
save 30.
whoops, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, sorry, I just had, yes, if you can, I'm
I
not
think you
able,
need to stop sharing first.
Okay.
There we go. And then here, share screen. Oops. Bear with me a second. Share screen. And we are going to optimize for video sharing. Okay. So this is just on the Extension Lakes website under the CBCW resources. And we're just going to watch a couple of videos here about how these inspections actually go. And if someone could confirm that they can actually see this video, that'd be great. And maybe
Hey everyone, big heads up, Paleo Valley's running a sale on all their meat sticks right now. You can get 30 sticks for $36.
There we go.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hello, my name's Tim and I'm with the local lake association and we're sharing information about aquatic invasive species with folks who visit the lake this summer. Our lake has an invasive plant called Eurasian water milfoil and we just want to make sure it doesn't get spread to other lakes. Have you talked to a person in a Clean Boats, Clean Waters blue shirt before?
No, not that I remember. We actually came here quite regularly last summer, and I don't remember seeing somebody with a shirt like that.
Well, our program is pretty new. We just realized that Eurasian water milfoil is spread really easily in the water and on boats, and we just want to ask a few questions.
Sure, you can do that, but I think you might be talking to the wrong person. We know all about plants, we take them off all the time, and honestly, this is the first time we've launched all season, so.
Oh. Okay, well, I understand. That's great to hear you're familiar with aquatic invasive species. Maybe you've also heard about the prevention steps, which are required by law, that you can take to make sure you're not transporting invasive species. They're pretty simple and logical, such as inspecting your boat and equipment and removing anything you find attached. Have you heard of this before?
Yep, we always remove the plants from the bottom of the boat and from the motor and
Your
stuff.
boat does look pretty clean, so it's important that you remove anything you find attached before leaving the boat landing. Plants often like to get stuck on boats, propellers, and trailers, and since invasive species can also be transported in water, Wisconsin law requires you to drain all your water from your boat and equipment before leaving the landing. Have you heard of this before? It is a newer law.
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I thought it was just if you were fishing, and we're not fishing today.
Well, it does apply to all boaters, and it's really important that you drain the water because tiny critters and plants can be in the water, so draining your water from any equipment and the motor in the boat can help prevent the spread of invasive species. I do have a sticker and a pamphlet that has the prevention steps on it that you can take home and check out.
Great,
So,
thanks.
Awesome, well, thanks.
Super.
Enjoy
Thank
your
you.
day.
Bye.
Well, I wake up extra early just to check on the
Right, so that's
condition.
that video. Let me go back here and we'll see the next one. I will just comment that I did notice the inspector did put his hand on the boat, which is a no-no. Just make sure that we don't touch other people's equipment or boat without their permission. That's a big one. Otherwise, I think it went pretty well for the most part. Now, I want to just go to this one. I know we're already after 3 o'clock at this point, so I just want to go through one more. This is a bit more of a well, I don't want to say confrontational, but an inspection with a person who's kind of been through it a lot of times and just kind of wants to get out of here. So play this one.
On Chewy, save 35% and shop all your favorite brands. For any take.
Have you been inspected yet this year?
Yeah, so many times, I know. Drain the water, pick the weeds off. I know.
Okay, I'll take it you have been inspected this year then.
Many times. I mean, don't you have anything better to do? They're just weeds.
Well, actually, some of the weeds can actually be aquatic invasive species, and they can cause big problems for our lakes. So since you've been inspected, I'll just make it short. I just want to remind you of the prevention steps that are required by law. So just make sure to inspect your boat, trailer, motor, and the equipment for vegetation or debris or mud, just make sure to remove that. And then drain all water, not only from your boat, but your motor or any containers you have with catch, and don't move live fish. Those are the prevention steps, and thank you for helping us prevent the spread of the aquatic invasive
Awesome.
species.
Thanks for being so quick.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that particular one, you know, there are people that you'll encounter, for example, like fishing guides or people that are putting in docks or taking out docks and so forth, that have heard it a lot of times before, and by now they should be well aware. So just the best thing you can do is offer to be helpful if they'll have you do it, and if you're able to see that they're doing those prevention steps, make sure you compliment them, especially if it's someone who's got clients with them, like a fishing guide. Um, you know, that I guess that's kind of the gist of um, you know, that kind of quick conversation. Just make sure they know how to follow the laws. And your job as an educator, and you can make it quick. All right, so with that in mind, I'm going to stop sharing this. And are there any other questions about those videos?
Derek, we're going to have you talk about violations now, how to report them.
Okay.
Let me stop sharing here. Oh, I did stop sharing. Go ahead. Steph, I think we need the presentation back up.
Oh, okay. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Yes.
It's up.
Okay.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, remember you guys are not law enforcement officers, and you cannot force people to comply with the law. In Wisconsin, Clean Boats, Clean Waters is strictly for education purposes, but you can certainly um, talk to and advise people of the law and what are the, correct steps. You just can't enforce them to do anything. Like I said, it's all education. So if you do see anybody that is um, not complying with the law and you are able to, it is helpful to, like we mentioned before, just take down as much information as you can of that boat, or get good information. So if they are not complying or do um, get what's the right word I want to say, non-compliant, that you do have information that you can report as well. Just make sure that you're not making it too obvious that that is what you are doing. And like all this sort of goes towards be a good witness. There used to be AIS violation report forms that we hand out that kind of give a, yes, there they are. Um, that's sort of like, hey, here's the things that they're looking for, and just make sure that you take down as much data on that sheet as you can. And then there's also the TNR tip number or the local warden number to call in that area. They do change quite frequently, especially with turnover. So that's why we keep those blank, so we can keep those updated from year to year, and we just write those in. Next slide. Some board identifiers, you're going to want to get the registrations number, and if the registration is up to date, you'll see the year there, and then the registration number of the boat as well. Anything that's less than 12 feet in length or doesn't have a motor do not need to be a registered aquatic vehicle in Wisconsin. Manually propelled boats are okay. And then boats that are registered in another state using Wisconsin waters for less than 60 days are, again, okay. They're usually registered in another state anyway. Next slide. Okay, so as we talked about before, you want to be courteous and friendly. You want to make sure that everybody's in good spirits, both yourself and the boater, and you want to be, appreciative that they're out recreating, and hopefully they're appreciative that you're taking down information and making sure things aren't being spread from lake to lake to lake, and hopefully everybody stays in good terms. Um, Over the last 10 or so years that I've done clean boats, clean waters inspections, I can remember 4 that didn't go well. And that's after hundreds of inspections. So maybe you'll run into 1 a year, if that.
People
Maybe.
are people are typically thanking you for
Mhm.
helping to keep that lake clean. So,
Yep. And like Kathy said earlier, the program's been going on for so long that people have usually heard the spiel by now. And they're usually pretty compliant with things at this point.
so I'm just going to wrap it up here. So remember that it only takes just a minute to remove plants, animals, sand, mud. My favorite saying is, if it doesn't belong, don't take it along. Just remember that. And so that practice alone is the main proactive actions that you can do to prevent something like this Eurasian water milfoil from entering that lake or getting spread around to other water bodies that are vulnerable. So, and then with that, I think that's all we have. Any questions? If you've got questions, we can hang around for a while and answer them. Otherwise, I think that's it. Oops.
I'll just mention that I put the resources that I have for Vilas County in the chat sort of towards the beginning. So there's all kinds of information there about where the aquatic invasive species are, some conversation prompts, and all kinds of other good stuff. So if people have further questions, please contact me. And I know that an online training isn't the easiest way to learn this sometimes. One-on-one is great. So if people have needs for further one-on-one like practice, either contact someone with your lake organization that's real well versed at this, or give your county coordinator a call.
I think that's it.
Thank you for offering the virtual opportunity. It is extremely helpful for just too much going on in life. So I encourage still doing this because I know that's not easy for you guys to have to pull off either. So appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Anne. Thank you. Thanks
Hey,
for attending,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thank you. It was very helpful.
You're welcome. Call if you need anything, and have a good season.
You too. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks,
bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
And this
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.